and welcome to this series of workshops created by Inner Courtyard and Spark Magic. I'm sure you'll love this series. It's been created with so much of passion, so much of effort, so much of learning that we have gathered together to put it in a capsule just for you. And I can tell you one thing, as a therapist, as a healer for so many years, I know how much it has supported me in my dealing with people. I understand so much better thanks to these concepts as to how to deal with the people I meet, with my clients, and it is really a huge benefit for me. So let's get on with the course. The topic for the day is our multiple brains. And as we go through this learning bite, we'll learn how these multiple brains of ours help us make decisions, balance our decisions, and live happier, more fulfilled lives. So let's get on and see what this multiple brain theory is all about. So this multiple brain theory that we are talking about, is it something new? Is it something that has been there and we are not being aware of it? What is it? Well, the fact is, all ancient traditions have talked about it. They've referred to it in different ways. For instance, we take our chakra system. We talk about having these energy points within our body. What else is it? It's a form of intelligence. You look at the Inuits. You look at the Eskimo as a tribe. You look at people from Mongolia. The indigenous tribes of Mongolia. You look at people in the shamans. The fact is, all ethnographic data that has been collected over the past 100 years shows one thing in common amongst all the traditions, and they all talk about the three souls that every person has. Now, what else are souls? A soul is another way of saying an intelligence. So you can call it the higher brain, the lower brain, the middle brain. You can call it, the different names. But the fact is, we have always known about it. And now it has been proved, you can say, that there are actually multiple intelligences residing in the physiological body. To understand this concept better, let us look at what a brain is. We've all studied it in school. So we know what constitutes a brain. We know that you have neurons, you have motor neurons, you have sensory neurons, you have interneurons, you have other support cells, the components like glial cells, and you have astrocytes, you have proteins and complex chemical neurotransmitters, and a whole lot of stuff which is all getting very technical. A brain also has certain functional attributes. A brain is supposed to assimilate data, it is supposed to put it together, store it for you, and as a memory, and have a process of accessing them. So what does the brain do with all this paraphernalia? What is the job of the brain? If I look at it, it's a very simple thing that the brain's function is. It's meant to help you survive. Fight, flight, that means fight if you see an enemy, or run away if you see an enemy, and it should be able to feed you, it should be able to replicate you, help you propagate your species. That's the function of the brain. And though it looks very simple, it doesn't do it with just one brain, it does it with at least 3 brains that we are aware of. And these 3 brains have their own personalities, they have their own functions, they have their own locations. So let's look at the 3 brains. The first brain I'm going to talk about is the gut brain. And to put a little context to it, I'm going to give you a little story, and it's a real story. It started way back in the late 1800s. It was a foggy, rainy day in London, and there were these two guys, two researchers, poor things, were working in that cold atmosphere, in that foggy, uncomfortable weather. They were working, and they were working to study the digestive system of a dog, right? Suddenly, they made a very amazing discovery. And it's a discovery that has, that is linked to all living beings. What they found was that the food in the intestines of the dog was still being digested despite the fact that the nerves of the spinal cord had actually been severed. And it was actually a path-breaking discovery, because what it showed was that the gut brain has its own intelligence and it doesn't take orders from the top master, supposedly the top master, the big head brain. And though this was a very, very important discovery, and there were a couple of other people who did a lot of research on this in Europe, somehow this knowledge was forgotten. A lot of other scientists, medical schools, they just buried this information for years. They didn't take it very seriously. They kept on focusing on the cephalic brain, and it is only in the last 15 years that this knowledge has now suddenly caught on the interest of the top people, of the top doctors and researchers and scientists. There is a book called The Second Brain, written by Michael Gershon. I think it was only about 15 years ago that he wrote this book, and now this has become the latest, most important part of academic interest and theory, and people are still trying to make the connections. Now let's look at the brain from an evolution perspective. The gut brain, or the enteric brain as we call it, is primal. It's primal to our physical development. It's primal to our sense of identity, our very sense of being, I would say. And why do I say that? Well, we know that the first organisms that evolved over Earth were unicellular, and over a period of time they became multicellular, and as they moved around the ocean, the reason for their existence was very simple. It was to find food and to avoid danger. As life started moving out of the sea onto land, slowly the other brains started developing, and as we evolved over centuries, over thousands of years, all the three brains became a way for the organism to manage this very complex surrounding and environment. So where do you find the gut brain? Where would you find the gut brain? Now the gut brain is found in the sheets of the, in the tissues of our intestines, our esophagus, our stomach, our large intestines, the small intestines, the bowel. It also sends messages, and it has a very direct connection to the liver, to the gallbladder, to the pancreas. So I would say that if we say a gut brain, it's not just the technical gut, but it innervates the entire system. It includes areas of the chest, and your stomach, and all the way down. How do we know it's a brain, or it functions as a brain? Well, it contains as many as 500 million neurons, and it is as complex as, let's say, a cat's brain, and that's quite a lot. A lot of you would be familiar with this term serotonin. Serotonin is a hormone which is produced in the body, and mostly it is created in the gut. It's called a happy chemical. It is given to you as a synthetic, in a synthetic formulation when you are in depression, for instance. 95% of it is produced in the gut brain, not in the head brain. So if somebody is depressed and you say, get it out of your system, or get it out of your head. You're just thinking it. No, it's not in your head. It's actually a lot of serotonin not being produced in the system by thoughts perhaps which are emerging in your head. So now let's look at the heart brain. It's a second brain to evolve. It was in the year 1991 that this whole concept of neurocardiology was introduced, and and they said that there is actually a functional brain in the heart. I've also heard about people who've had transplants, and they have a heart transplant, and the memories of the person from whom the heart has been transplanted onto actually become the memories of the person who's a recipient. There have been many cases like that, slightly anecdotal, but I believe that it is very much happening. Now the heart has as many as 40,000 and upwards of 40,000 to 120,000 neurons. So it's actually a huge number, and the heart brain is it secretes dopamine, and dopamine is the chemical which is associated with pleasure and reward, which also automatically means that all your passion rests here. So if I'm not passionate about something, if I'm not excited about something, my heart will never be in it. When we say that, it actually makes complete sense. It also has a lot of other hormones. It also it secretes oxytocin, which is nothing but the bonding chemical. It's a love chemical. It's a bonding chemical. And when you spend a lot of time with people with whom you're well bonded, the neural pathways of the heart brain become much stronger. When you do things which you're passionate about, the neural pathways here become much stronger. When you are always unhappy, the neural pathways start dying out. So when someone says, I don't feel anything at all, I've gone numb, to some extent we are also referring to the heart brain, which means, and the heart brain has become numb. That means the neural pathways are no longer functioning, because any neural pathway which you do, or neurons that you don't use, eventually start dying out. So we know that the heart has a brain, but how does it influence you? So there was a lot of research done by a team of scientists called John and Beatrice Lacey, and what they discovered was that the heart communicates to the head brain or the cranial brain, giving a perception of the world and telling the individual what they should be doing. So there's a one-way communication which goes on, and it actually helps the individual make decisions, find happiness, because it's giving a direction. This is what you like, this is what you don't like. It has a very, very empowering effect. If you are speaking from there, you'll find yourself making all the right choices which will give you real happiness if you follow your heart. So now I'm going to talk to you about what we are most familiar with, which is the cephalic brain. This is the brain which we have grown up revering. This is the brain which we consider as the most important, but apparently it's not. It's brain number 3, the last one to get evolved in the cycle of life. We know the most about it. It has about 100 million cells, so neurons. It has 2 separate and connected hemispheres, the left brain and the right brain. We've also, I'm sure a lot of you would have studied what the left brain does and what the right brain does. The left brain is more logical, rational, where the right brain is more, heart-focused and emotion-centric. But I can just give you a list, just for your information, that, the left brain is more for verbal tasks, for logical and problem thinking, problem solving, for analytical time sequence, for all kinds of detailed processing, for positive approach, and a very positive approach to related problems. Whereas if I look at the right brain, it's very non-verbal. It likes to specialize or it likes to work with specialized tasks. It keeps discriminating. It likes to see all details and tries to discriminate between things. It understands metaphor. It's the one which is which helps you identify faces. It can get very withdrawn and negative with emotions. So when you're getting depressed and you can't tell why, it's probably your right brain working. I hope this information was useful for you. And in the next learning bite on this, we'll talk about what are the actual functions of each brain, what is the language they speak, and what you should be doing to balance them out. So thank you very much and see you soon.